tātou. I thought I would just introduce myself. I'm Caleb, for those that don't know me. Most of you will, if not, you'll get to know me. Currently the chairperson for the New Zealand Egyptological Society, NZES. We've got other members of the committee here as well as previous members, Joe, who I'll introduce very shortly. But I just wanted to thank you in person and online for supporting this. This has been the development of something we've been trying to do and grow momentum the last few years. When we set up the society, got it incorporated, and kind of navigated the only time we talk about it, the post-COVID kind of world, to actually have some momentum behind what we think is a really aspirational group of people, all connected through a passion for Egypt, ancient, modern, otherwise. And I think it's a real privilege to actually have Joe here speak as our first of a lecture series, given that Joe was a previous member of the committee, but also integral to actually launching this as our first treasurer, but also his connection to not only the University of Auckland, to us all as people that know him, and then his work in the GLAM sector now at Tamaki Painga Hera, the Auckland War Memorial Museum, working with another close associate colleague of mine, Christiane, as well, through membership and coordination, but also really capably hosting events there as well. I think Joe helped wrangle some of us for the recent lecture series that was associated with the exhibition there on ancient Egypt as well. So it's kind of nice to be able to return the favour in some ways in doing that. Joe, I won't say when Joe was a student here, it was a wee while ago, but has completed his master's here and has been teaching in various capacities now with is it School for Medical? Medicine, yeah. I mean, the names change here a lot. I digress on that, but has been part of the course he's going to talk about for quite some time now, as you can see from most of the slide on screen. So I really am looking forward to hearing about this because it kind of combines our connections in many ways through the university here, through the NZES, and our passion, as I say, too. So I think this is a really special way to start things. I'm looking forward to it, Joe. So the floor is all yours. Joe's going to speak for about 45 minutes, but if you do have questions, either save them up or Joe may ask for them on the way through as well. So we get a really nice dialogue. So Joe, thank you. Really, really appreciate that.
No pressure after that introduction. All right, so first off, thank you very much to everybody for coming tonight, be you in person or online, or even if you see this as a recording later. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the NZES for having me. It's really quite cool. I got to help set up the society a wee while ago, and to be invited back to give this talk is a lot of fun. What I get to talk to you about tonight is something that has been something I really love doing. I'm getting to teach usually eager people about the ancient world in a way that hopefully matters to them in a way that we may not quite realize. This is the Medical Humanities program up at the University of Auckland's School of Medicine, Grafton campus, names interchangeable. I might refer to it as a department at some point, even though we don't say departments these days. I don't know. So while I was here, yes, I was in the Department of Classics and Ancient History. My focus was on Egyptology, but over the time, and especially from teaching this course, I've grown to really love all the other disciplines that fall under our school, except for Rome. Rome's last place, because what have the Romans ever done for us? What about wine? Now, throughout my talk, I'm going to refer to myself, just myself, but please, at every point I say this, do mean that I am actually just here as one person amongst many who helped bring this course to life. I want to give a quick shout out to Steph Martin, who's here, who started this course with me, Aaron Rhodes and Liz Eltz, who have taken turns lecturing with me, but also Drs. Philippa Malpas and Suzanne Bull from Grafton, who first approached us to put this course on, And all of the lecturers in our department who have just like helped me through the years were just like answering my stupid questions and helping me navigate situations. In particular, Lisa Bailey and of course, Dr. Jennifer Helm, who basically looked after me my entire undergrad. Thank you. And postgrad. So, tonight is a crash course of the last 10 years I've been teaching. You might think that's a lot, but have a thought for my students who consume roughly 4,000 years of history within 12 weeks. So I'll leave it up to you to decide who's got the worst shake of the stick. I've chunked this out into the three main parts that you can see there, and let's just crack into it. Naturally, we start at the start. To like the one person in the room who probably knows what I'm going to talk about next, please hold your silence, so let me talk. You know this part, Steph. But otherwise, everybody. So first off, what actually really is medical humanities? So it is a stage 3 paper taught through the medical campus. And for those, quick raise of hands, who here studied at Auckland University and did a general education paper? There we go, most people there, very good. For those who didn't, mum, a general education paper, as it says on the slide there, it fulfills the requirement of an undergrad degree that's not within your main study. So for me doing arts, I ended up doing physics, and that was terrible. Approximately 20 years ago, Grafton noticed that this requirement to their students in their undergrad degrees, it was having a severely detrimental effect on them. The medical program is so cutthroat that not doing well in this required undergraduate paper was actually causing a massive spanner in the works for these med students. Their GPAs were tanking, ballooning stress, all of the bad things. They have such a cutoff going from stage 1 into stage 2, further into stage 3, and then beyond into their postgraduate studies that they just couldn't really focus on something that was not medical. Into medical humanities, and this is papers from other departments such as law, philosophy, fine arts, music, history, all outside that medical degree, thus ticking that stupid little bureaucratical box. But all of these topics are taught on a medical topic, and it helps the students focus more on their medicine, preserves their GPAs, their stress isn't going wild. Hopefully it's all good. Now, while on the abstract I submitted to Liz said there were 13, this year there are actually 16. There are now. I've taken this from the campus page, so I'm not sure if some of these titles are still the ones that my fellow lecturers want to go with this year, but it's in writing now, too bad. With next year going into 2026, there's actually going to be 2 more options added, so there's going to be a total of 18 from next year. So where does classics and ancient history come in? Well, it all starts with this man. One day about 11 years ago, Steph came to grab me. I was just in the Commons, and she said, Matthew, you need to see me in his office. And I'll be honest, I was actually kind of terrified at that point. I had just come off like 3 days of just like really having long phone call fights with StudyLink over my student loan. I thought I was in some form of trouble. But what he actually had for us was an opportunity to step in for him. Philip and Malchus had approached him about adding classics and ancient history to the medical humanities stream. And Matthew found he just didn't have the time for himself. So he recommended Steph, and Steph came and got me. And with his recommendation, we got the job. It's very safe to say that whatever comes next after that point, it's all thanks to Matthew. So none of this would have been possible without him. I'll always be thankful to him, even if he did get us trundled way too many times. Now, I really can't remember, Steph, if we came up with the title first or last, but here is the title that we came up with, and I just want to say it is far more jazzy than any of the other titles being taught. It's actually got some star power to it. So, magicians, philosophers, doctors, and the gods, medical belief and practice in the ancient world. No heckling, please. So early on, we decided this course has to go as far as our department goes. Our department, as it covers at this stage that I knew it, 4 main disciplines: Egypt, Greece, Rome, and the late antiquity era. In all honesty, I wish we could actually go further. It would actually be my dream to do this course in both semesters, expand it to encompass more cultures from Europe, Asia, Africa, but I've only got one semester with these students, so we have to go with what we know here. But another thing that we noticed really early on was we were actually getting stuck in a major bias of ourselves. We initially started thinking of this course like we're going to be teaching a stage 3 course to stage 3 art students. These are not, these are medical students. So when we get students coming into classics and ancient history, we can assume a level of knowledge on their part, like they know something slightly deeper than surface level history of Egypt, Greece, and Rome. They've most likely done a history class or a classics class at high school. They're used to long format essay writing, more than just like descriptions and things. They hopefully know what a primary versus secondary source is. None of this we can actually assume with medical students, even if they did any of that at high school. The potential gap between doing it at high school and coming into my class, it's far too many years to rely on this. But the main one I want to stress at this point is that last bullet point of, did they even actually choose us? At the moment, we're sitting as one of 16 courses. In October last year, the cohort of students coming into 2025 classes, they were presented with the options for this year, and they were given the chance to rank them top 4 choices. And I think, as anybody can guess, choosing something first versus choosing something fourth off the podium, there's a big difference on, are you actually going to be involved in the class? Luckily, and this is going to sound really skitey, so Mum, don't yell at me for this, our course has actually been one of the most popular since it was introduced, based on both prior student feedback and incoming student choices. So we're at least in the top 3, which is great. The other thing we asked Philippa was, how far can we go? There's a great many things that happen in the ancient world which are very unsavory to a lot of people's taste. We talk about them just as a matter of fact with our studies, but we know that's not really the norm for a lot of other students at the university. Philippa's answer was go for gold. They're stage 3 students. By this point, nothing should scare them. If it does, they're in the wrong degree. So with that in mind, we charged on full ahead with approaching things like, all right, abortion, euthanasia. Where else can we go? All was permissible. A little about the course itself. It's entirely internally assessed. There's no exam. Personally, I really love that for them. I hear enough about the other major assessments throughout the year that I think those are just nightmarish situations. So the fact that we can give them a chance to submit writing to us, we can give them feedback and they can improve on it for next time. And we don't have this looming darkness on the horizon of them sitting in a room trying to remember everything I told them for the last 12 weeks. I really love it. Now, across the entire course, the only thing which is consistent is the 25% seminar. That is the only assessment in the entire course which is essentially sacrosanct. It will always be there. All those other values might come and change, but this one will always be there. The idea is that they need to gain confidence with public speaking, both with their own colleagues, but also with patients and their families. And they need to be able to do so with confidence, to be able to describe the situation going on without being too jargony. It's an important job, and this is their chance to practice that. We always follow this up with a question time. Your own colleagues co-students get to ask some questions. I always have to ask them a couple of questions as well. I always ask them one decidedly mean one because I want to test how far they actually researched. But I always ask them the gimme question of what was the most fun / weird thing you found out during your research? And that really gets them animated, which I quite like. With the writing, we're allowed to structure that however we like. We early on decided off on 25% topic essay. We base this on another question in the course. So let's say Liz presents on one of the Egyptian topics, shock horror. When it comes to her topic essay, she has to pick something from Greece, Rome, or late antique. So we force them to spread their wings a little bit. With the final essay, the review essay, it's a cumulative piece of writing. We want them to take a broad view of medicine on the topics that we're giving them. and to talk about at least 2 of the cultures that we've covered in this semester. We allow them to go for 3 cultures if they really think they can do it, and we outright warn them, do not try and talk about all 4 cultures. You've only got 2,500 words. You're not going to go deep enough. It's just going to be very broad. But does that stop the occasional self-proclaimed prodigy from giving it a crack? No. Does it get an A? No. Finally, that 10% class participation, it is often the make or break between a grade point for them. As I've bolded it out there, active and thoughtful engagement throughout the semester. Yep, I don't just award points for showing up and saying something and me being like, oh, yep, I heard Jen's voice today, that's fine. No, I want to hear something proper coming out of your brain. I want to see you like really engaging with the subject matter, engaging with your fellow students. Now, imagine, if you will, that you have, you're doing a medical degree and you've also got to stage 3. Well done, that's a feat in itself. And you got to those choices and you chose me. Hey, fantastic. Here's what you can expect over the next 12 weeks. The first lecture is essentially a grounding for them in the ancient world. It's a bit of a doozy of a lecture because I essentially take them through what was the courses we once had in the department of Egypt 100, Greece 100, and Rome 100. It's thousands of years of history and politics and everything for context, all in 1 hour, and it hurts. We also give them a bit of time to get to know some of the readings and how we're going to be assessing these readings. We want to see critical analysis in the coming weeks, and we talk to them about, yes, this is what it is actually saying, but we want you to infer what is the actual meaning behind this. We take them through a couple of examples, and one of the ones we kind of throw them in the deep end a little bit, to give them almost like a palate cleanser for this will get rough at points, by talking about the example of Rosemary Kennedy. A very modern example, but all the medical write-ups of the procedure that was done to Rosemary, they got in one direction, but the reality of it was far darker and far grimmer. And yeah. Now, introduction done, and hopefully brain's not exploded. We move into the best culture, the brightest culture, the most amazing one, but also the one where so far, and I do check this every year before I start teaching, Egypt is still the culture with the earliest recorded medical writings in the world. Asia is getting close as they find more and more stuff in China, but until they can beat the Kahun papyrus, it's Egypt, baby. Now, with gynecology, we touch on sexual health, contraceptives, abortificants, and what the Egyptians knew about the full pregnancy and birth cycle. Turns out quite a lot. For those of you in the room, no, I did not bring any of this stuff up to my wife when she was pregnant with our little boy. I'm smart enough not to do that, okay? Also a point where I do talk about the course I'm teaching when I'm up at work at the York Museum. I've got mates who ask me, oh, what are you talking about this week? And when I just nonchalantly just drop in like, hey, we're talking about how crocodile dung is an effective spermicide and blah, 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 I usually have people looking back at me like I'm insane. Moving into surgery, we approach the really cool, quite unique dichotomy of the Egyptians having some really quite good surgical techniques, but how they balance this against the desire for one's body to remain as intact as possible. We cover the subtopics of dental care and prosthesis here too. I always like getting a show of hands in the room first for who's had braces before, and when I get the hands, I'm like, fantastic, you're not going to like the next slide because it's ancient dental wear. And we also talk about some of the myths and legends of ancient Egypt, where a lot of the medical knowledge appears to have come from, and how the Egyptian religiosity like pervades through basically all of their society. Now, the last topic we cover in Egypt is, of course, mummification. It's the first one we wrote as a team. We knew we had to do this one. We knew it would be like the big ticket item. So yeah, we go through, we talk about the remains and possessions of mummified people. We also use the recent correction to Auckland Museum's own collections, Ancient World Display, where we now know that the mummified person, once called Ta Sechmet, is actually properly now known as Suso Erepanang, a project that was completed with the help of Jen Helen. So we use this as an example to talk about how scholarship, even recent scholarship, can be corrected, can be improved upon. And in their essays, I want to see recent sources, not old sources. Yeah, so I use that to hammer this home. We take a thousand years or so and we move our continents. We're head on up to Greece. We start to take a shift away from the magic religious techniques, and we start to get into the formations of what we would understand as like westernized medical systems. We start with the end, essentially, of religiosity with Asclepius and his Asclepions, the Greek god of healing, and his temples, which in all honesty today would function perfectly fine as medical retreats for the rich and famous who need to rehabilitate their image. The middle topic there, philosophy. Greece is perhaps most well known for its philosophy, but with this lecture, we emphasize Greece as a meeting point of cultures in the ancient world. It's where ideas mix and evolve, particularly the Ionian coast, where, like a better term, you've got the east meets west. You've got all of the Africa and Asia cultures moving up and meeting all the Greco-Romans coming over from the west. We take them through the broad strokes of philosophy's evolution, and speaking as a guy who utterly loathed Socrates back in high school, this lecture is the densest, but there's a surprising fact about it I'll give you a bit later. Finally, in Greece, we talk about the one person in the entire course that I expect the students to know about, Hippocrates, the Hippocratic Oath, the man himself. Or is he? We really start approaching like the idea of did this person or persons take credit for God knows how many students working at his early hospital, his university. Yeah, he's one of two people I expect the students to really have an idea of who he is. The other, he'll come later. Hippocrates has had quite possibly one of the most profound effects on medicine. Some of his theories survived him by nearly 2,000 years. So that's pretty good. Now, we come on to the Romans, and turns out they did actually do something for us. Now, Rome expanded through its army. It started off as a little boot in Europe, and it grew to encompass essentially the known world at that point, an empire to rival that of the ones erupting out of Asia. Keeping the army, who were responsible for this expansion, was a key point of the Roman society. And they are responsible for creating the first structures of what we would term a hospital, the valetudinaria. However, like the Asclepions of Greece, they were not for everybody. So this lecture is an important one for us to show that primary evidence itself can be biased, and it leads to a lot of modern scholars still painting biased pictures of history. We revisit gynecology with Serranus. By now, it's been a couple thousand years, couple of weeks since we touched upon this subject with Egypt. We have a lot more information on women and women's health compared to Egyptian times, but this is still being brought to us from a man's writing. So that's another lovely little dichotomy and aspect we approach this from. Personally, I always love that we get these pictures from in textbooks now of, you can just be like, have you never seen a baby in your life? That is a grown person falling out of a uterus. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Then the last lecture in Rome is about Galen. We essentially tell the students this guy would be House if House lived a couple thousand years ago. He is the most arrogant son of a bitch that will ever live. But he was damn brilliant, so you kind of got to give it to him. Galen's work would be influential and create a plateau that would last until the Renaissance. Yeah. So, it was only about 1,500 years after Galen's time that reassessments and innovation of his work actually took off. However, his sheer academic output and frequency of innovations and contributions is just simply astounding. So we have to go for it. It's always weird to me when students don't know who he is, because I can always point to at least 2 or 3 things that they do, which are going to be like, that's a Galenic technique. Now, finally, we get into the final lectures of the course, and these are actually close to becoming my favorites because I get to have a lot of fun with them. In a very brief nutshell, and Lisa Bailey is going to kick me for saying this, this is like the briefest summation of her courses. When the ancient world slowly converted to Christianity, everything changed. Lisa's going to kill me for that. Particularly healthcare. Healthcare in particular, it got radically changed as various practices were either sanctified, deemed heretical, or given a facelift to just make them more acceptable in the current state. All of this is really worth examining because we're getting to the end of where our department kind of ends. So this is a natural kind of ending point for the course in a way. Finally, we end with a case study about ethics, where I get the students to actually assess all the previous lessons through the ethics of both the modern lens, but what we can glean from ethics of those times and those cultures. We get to talk about also so far as I know, the only guy in ancient history to actually give a hoot about ethics, Scribonius Largus. Unfortunately for Scribonius, he made an enemy of Nero, and making enemies of Nero never goes well for anybody. So we've got to the end of the course. They've had their lectures, they've written their essays, they've participated in class, hopefully enough. They've done well enough of these things that they can pass the course. And so far, everybody has passed the course. There's been a couple of near misses, but everybody's good. They're all working out in our hospitals, some of them now. I've been walking around Auckland Hospital occasionally, and I've seen my little students all grown up wearing coats and everything. I get the occasional text from my wife working on North Shore going, "Hey, do you remember this guy?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I do." Old. But yeah, that said though, what is it actually like? I will say it. But they're really, like, as me and Steph thought away at the start of this, they are not like art students at all. They will absolutely push their limits. I gave back in the day, students had a 20-minute time limit for their seminar, plus or minus 10%, therefore 2 minutes. 0.57 microseconds to go. Well done, mate. You do not get a time penalty for you. Yeah, they will absolutely take everything that you can give them and possibly a little bit more. And they will always want the same topics. With the seminars, we decided to divide them evenly across the semester and have a couple of students a week present on the topics. So from week 2 through to week 11, we've got 2 to 3 students presenting every time. And that first lecture, and I've learned to try and do this beforehand now, I get them to fill out a little survey thing, rank your choices, let me know what you'd like. Every flippin' year, they want mummification and they want Roman military valetudinarian. Shout out to the Greek temples for coming in a consistent 3rd or 4th place every year, but every time I come back on that first Thursday night, I'll flick a quick text to Liz saying, "It's happened again. They all want this." I've been lucky enough that all their 2nd and 3rd choices over the years have managed to get them into those, so nobody has been outside their podium placement of choices. But my God, has it gotten close. And do I start the next lecture by saying, "You guys made it hard"? Again, yes, I do. Remember what I said about me not liking philosophy? That does not apply to my students. In the last at least 5-6 years, so most of the time we've been teaching this course, philosophy has actually turned into one of the best weeks for them. They are really good at getting into the readings, even though they're so jargony, they're laden with metaphor, they're filled with context, like names, places, things, persons. I went and did this and that, and I had an argument with this person. I went and pissed off this ruler, blah, 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 all on the idea of like knowing truth. And they get that. And for a bunch of very scientific students who are very used to like 1 + 1 = 2, and that's a fact, I'm not going to equivocate on that, approaching a course where they're being like, "Yes, but what if 1 + 1 could not equal 2? They don't give a hoot. They just dive into it and they do really well. They've been some of the most thought-provoking seminars I've ever listened to, and the question time that is coming through from all of their fellow students, it usually leaves me at the end not need to ask beyond the, "Oh, what did you have fun researching this week?" Because you've already stood up to a grilling, it's fine. So yeah, it's been really great. On the whole, they're not great at researching, initially, I would say. In their medical degree, they're very used to being given their readings or having a portal set up for them. The readings themselves, they're very scientific. They don't have a lot in the way of nuance or ambiguity. But like everybody who's attending this lecture can understand, ambiguity is where the ancient world thrives. So they look through these primary sources once they've figured out what a primary source is. And if they need a little prompting, they come to me. And sometimes I come back to them with a fairly high degree of sarcasm because, yep, I did give an actual answer to the student, which was equally unhelpful by just saying, "Yep, some of the sources say Nero did this, some of them sources said Nero did that." What I can say for certain is Nero was not helpful. I don't know if that essay turned out well because they actually changed topic after that. This one I find is largely based on the semester I find myself teaching. By stage 3 in our department, we are a very tight-knit bunch. The people I grew up with during university, during my undergrad, by 3rd year, we were going to the pub together, house parties, study groups, all of that. It's not so with the med students. They have a roughly 600 to 700 person first year, which gets whittled down to maybe about 300 or so in 2nd year, and then again slightly whittled to about 250 in 3rd year. They largely know everybody by sight, but I would not say they really know everybody well enough to go around to their place and get absolutely smashed in their couch. So they're coming into stage 3 with little in the way of like a teamwork or camaraderie kind of ethos about them. They're still stuck in that competitive nature that has got them to stage 3. However, by the time they start doing these stage 3 courses, they are having to do far more labs together. They have to do far more work where they realize I can't quite do this all by myself. I should be working with someone else. So for the last few years where I've been teaching in semester 2, I've luckily been able to get them at a point where this barrier between each other has been broken down. They're much used to working with each other, with sharing resources. I often find that with the seminars, the people who are presenting later in the semester, they've actually clearly been talking to people early in the semester because they figured out what Joe rewards and what he pings. So I'm fine with that. It shows you're actually working together. I much prefer my doctors to work together. That's fine. That's great. The knowledge they're coming in with, it brings them into a class that's like they're more like hobbyists than somebody I'd say they're coming in like from our own department. But in a way that this honestly makes it a bit easier to teach them. They're not coming in with preconceived notions or theories about the ancient world. They're better than the armchair experts that we have to sometimes fight with on Wikipedia. And once I sail past the technicality that is Disney calling their movie Hercules, not Heracles, it's usually pretty okay with them. That one usually hurts their brains a little. If I'm lucky, majority of the students have done classics at high school. So they at least have some knowledge of the ancient world I can build on. And they got the interest in it, which is great. I've only so far had one student in the past 10 years who was, and she was just straight up about it. She just said, I got lumped in this class because I didn't do my choices, and this was the only one that had a gap, and I pleaded my case. And I fully thought at that time, this isn't going to go well for you, mate. But no, she actually did pretty well. So kudos to her. First off, I do want to say well done on the stock image for including New Zealand on it. We can't always say that about some maps around the world hanging in government departments. But what I do want to say here is that these stage 3 students, they are coming from everywhere, having done potentially anything. We've had students who have been their homegrown Jaffas coming up through the Auckland University system. We've had people who have started off in Otago or Wellington coming to Auckland to finish off, coming from Australia, Europe, India, wherever to finish off in Auckland. We've had people coming from fully fledged careers who are retraining to be a doctor. And these life experiences that these students are coming in with, it makes the class so much more richer when you can actually find a way to draw this out of them. A couple standouts for me so far have been a few years ago when me and Aaron were teaching, we had a student who was returning from 10 years as a nurse, primarily as a nurse in the outback in Australia. So she had all this wonderful practical knowledge and this of like actually being a medical healthcare provider, but also knowing these systems. And anytime we could talk about something in class, she knew about it or she had done something about it. It was that's really fascinating. The amount of times me and Aaron just pointed at him and just went like, go for gold, mate, you're in charge now. We'll just take your seat down the back. There was another student who, in that final class about ethics, he got really not stuck, but like caught up and really into the idea of like what Scribonius Largus talks about is in order to be a good person in Rome, yet a good Roman has to be a good soldier. A good soldier kills for Rome because he kills his enemies. However, a good doctor renders aid to anybody. By this point, the Hippocratic Oath it's never a requirement in healthcare, but it is certainly you should take the Hippocratic Oath, and the large and short of the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. So how can a good Roman be a good soldier, but also a good doctor. This student was Korean. He was the year after finishing our course, he was actually flying back to Korea to do his military service. This was a couple of years ago when tensions were much higher between North and South Korea, and where the possibility of being deployed was very high. And he was quite intrigued by the idea that something that he had been thinking about internally was just put out there on a slide for him by a guy 2,000 years ago. In a way, he was kind of amazed and saddened that the idea had not changed in those 2,000 years, but also was relieved that he was not the only person who had thought this way. So yeah, it was a really, with his permission, we talked about his situation a lot more, and it was really a lot of fun, in like a weird academic nerdy way fun, right? Has the course changed over the last few years? I am racing through this lecture. This is good for you guys. I would say yes, in big ways and small ways. We've changed the lectures. Steph, I took this from Facebook. I am so sorry. These lectures are not dead. They are just dead to me. I am trying to move on. Oh,
It's okay, you can skip that one slide.
did somebody take out a slide?
Maybe.
There is somebody else who is also co-lecturing with me, but she might have doctored my slides. My notes did say that she's all right, but I'm going to redact that now. We have changed up the lectures, ditching some entirely, expanding on others. Steph is giving me a very sharp look now, going like, because by now she's noticed that this is not the order that we decided on 10 years ago. So we used to include 4th century medicine with the Greece component, but we found over the years it was actually thematically a little bit better to finish on Hippocrates, and we can take some of that material from the 4th lecture on Greece, and we can weave it throughout the others, or even into the Rome lectures, because it just made a little bit more sense there. We used to have a lecture on Pliny, aka human Wikipedia, the man just wrote, or / dictated and had a slave write for him. Essentially, though, we realized this lecture is just a lecture about spouting off facts that this dude wrote, and some of them are just straight up wrong now. The man was convinced that your garden was the best place of medicine in your life. The amount of things I could tell you that a cabbage can do is rather up there, but we're mostly Egyptologists in the room. We are very wary of cabbages, as we said. Honestly, the most interesting thing about Pliny is that he was an absolute boss when it came to the Pompeii eruption, and he saved a lot of lives. Good on him for that. Yeah, we found he was just taking up a bit of space. Scribonius, he used to have his full lecture by himself, but we adapted that lecture to talk about Scribonius, lay the foundation of what he thought ethics were, and then expand that to go throughout the rest of the ancient world. And we brought in the Roman military lecture to make sure that Rome still had equal representation in the course. And yeah, I would say that any lecture in the course is potentially on the chopping block if we find it's not working, apart from mummification and the Roman military, because they're just too damn popular with the students. We have such a wealth of material there. But if we think that we notice that some things are just not going right, we've got the willpower and the apparent carte blanche with the course to just go where we like. So we will chop and change as necessary. And it's been good to be able to do that. COVID was a massive thing for all of us in the room, not least like being married to a nurse who was on the front line the entire time. The years itself were, with COVID, were rocking up with students because do we need them to come online, or can we be in class and we just socially distance? We need to be able to adapt and engage them in class and engage them online. And engaging students online is a nightmare. You have to spend 10 times the amount of energy to get a Zoom class engaging as you do people in the room. In all honesty, I'd rather just be online or in person. Hybrid, I never liked hybrid because you never know where you stood. Quick thank you to my wife for always giving me coffees and snacks off camera. I would argue that the students I feel were most affected by COVID were the ones who had their final years of school and their initial years at the university, in that weird hodgepodge, what level traffic light number are we in at this point? I find that these students, they're now very digitally orientated. They're they're used to having resources sent to them because the schools ended up setting up all these portals and just sending information out to students. Socially, they need a bit more to get involved in class, and some of them have never visited the university library, especially the main campus library, in their entire careers at the university so far. This last problem, it's actually become far more exacerbated in recent years because the main campus library is shuttering down the classics ancient history books that keep getting moved offline into storage. So you need to use the loan system to record things. Another thing we have to teach students about. They're just not used to it. So if they can get it online, they will go for it. However, it means they keep going for sources which are not fantastic.
My brain.
Oh, yes. There was a student who indeed quoted my brain. I might have taken a little bit of pleasure with in my feedback to them, writing back, your brain is not academically worthy enough source for this lecture. I slightly gussied up the language in that, but it was basically a, don't do that again. I don't mind them starting off at Wikipedia, but I don't want to see it referenced in their essay. And I know there's been recent efforts in years, even at my work up at the Auckland Museum, where Wikimedians and everybody, they actually creating wonderfully curated and very informative Wikipedia pages. These are not those that they're going to. These are written by people that, like Jeremy Armstrong keeps having a fight with. It's like, I did classics back when I was a toddler and blah, 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 and I'm 80 now, and this was true back then. No, it's not. Please don't use this. Yes, if I ever see Encyclopedia Britannica again, I am going to flip. And if you're wondering, do I keep a note of these students for me to refer back to later in case one of them becomes my doctor? Maybe. Can you also have access to this list? Maybe. Buy me a beer later. Where this leads us to is I end up doing a lot more workshops in class with them. We now teach them how to properly research an essay, how to properly navigate the library website. With Stefan, Liz, and Aaron, you've all made wonderful resources for me to use in this respect. We show them how we're actually going to be marking their essays as bare minimum. It's been 3 years, like 2 and a bit, 3 years since they've done a substantial piece of writing, since high school maybe, or maybe longer if they're one of these people who is coming back from a second career or just from having time off between study. So we get them to actually lay out the criteria of what we think we're going to reward the essay. And then I come back and I'll be like, actually, no, we're going to reward your essay like this. And we show them what we really care about in an essay, in terms of like argument and conception and everything. I never care about font so long as it's not wingdings. I'd like to do more workshops with them. Particularly, I think some of them could do with a workshop on public speaking. But because I know that's it's going to be a massive thing for them later in life, especially like they could end up going into a more research oriented medical path where they are going to have to be more of a public speaking person. But I've only got so much time. I have to balance all of their assessments equally, but also their needs equally. So yeah, if I find more time, I'm going to chuck in more workshops as I can. Biggest change, and I'd say challenge facing the course at the moment, is the ever-looming presence of AI. When we started this course, me and Steph never had to care about AI. It wasn't even on the radar. A couple of years in, AI is on the scene, but it's dumb enough that you can spot it a mile off. Now we have a piece in our opening lecture which basically says, thou shalt not use AI. We know ChatGPT is getting stronger and stronger these days. It is capable of writing a university level entrance essay for Harvard, which Harvard examiners were not able to pick up. It's looming. I think in particular with the medical field, it's a very scary prospect. The tide is shifting again with medical humanities. We recently had to attend a meeting as a cohort of coordinators to discuss would we allow AI into the course. My view of it has remained unchanged ever since it came out, that it is, I have trouble enough with actually intelligent people making up stuff about the ancient world. I don't need a robot doing it for you. This apparently puts me at odds with some of the people in the medical campus, which is a little bit weird. But luckily, enough people on the day, we all run it one out, and we're not allowing AI in the course in 2025 at least. I know this battle is going to come up again as we go into 2026. I'm not certain we're going to win it, at least in the way I want to win it at this point. So yeah, yeah, I think doctors should do their own doctoring, not relying on a robot to do it for them, but that might just be the ancient history nerd in me who likes his dates and numbers with a BC and an AD with them. Finally, I've changed. I've changed over this course. As Caleb mentioned, I'm in the glam sector now. This was actually the course that allowed me to leave hospitality, leave being a restaurant manager. Took a chance. I did the course. After that, I started working at the Auckland Art Gallery, and working through there, I eventually worked up to being at the Auckland Museum, where I am now. I get to work with Christina. Thanks for coming. I work in the membership department, as Caleb said. If you want to talk to me about that, come see me. I said that. You can tell Cristiano said that. Yeah, I shamelessly put uni lecturer on my Tinder profile, and clearly it worked. I have a wife, baby, and a lovely dog now. I've attended conferences because of this course where I've been in the same room as people who've made medical policy for New Zealand as a whole. One guy very charitably said that he thought it was bullshit that he had to follow me after I gave a fun lecture on how to mummify someone. And he was talking about the work he did with and making sure that fluoride could actually be into in waterways and looking after our teeth. And I was just like, you've done important work, mate. I'm just here as the light entertainment. But yeah, the course has been fantastic. It's the highlight of my working career. It's been really good for me, and it allowed me finally to come back here to talk with like my lecturers, my friends, my former co-workers, my current co-workers, people online. Yeah, it's been a great time. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening to me. Have you got any questions?
Quite recently.
Yep.
Okay, oh good. Yeah, I saw that it was quite interesting. I didn't go to the speech, but I was watching it on YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, so I've got I'm adopted, but biologically I've got medical blood. And no, it's really helpful because as far as I've been an ancient Egyptian, and I had this bedroom, Kalakir was a king there. And at that time, it was way back in God of Ra. It was maybe in its lifetime, they reversed all my past lives. But anyway, it was also an ancient Egyptian healer. And that was a lot of ancient sciences taught by John and Tolman. And there's ways you can say millions instead of giving it to the hospital, you know, the whole home to the hospital. So this has been my journey as an ancient healer from centuries ago, and I've regressed my past life, learned all my lessons from that. But yeah, that's part of death is that rejuvenation and applying like even a naturopath or ancient science or various different methods like Mayan abdominal massage is good for mothers. It's in St. Helens. And these things saved me a fortune. I've come back from near-death experience a couple of times, you know, because I was at the end of my tether. I saw I'm not at the end of my tether now, but I saw a ancestral healer for one session and eradicated from ancient DNA. I've never been in New Zealand before in any past lifetime, but it was on my mother's side, and I was purging for 40 minutes straight of something in the DNA. You know, reversed Alzheimer's, that was a potential medical, a potential onset for so yeah, I've done some pretty major reverses. That is, I think that should, as much as doctors, and I'm very impressed that doctors is a really admirable profession of curing humans. There is, it's too overworked.
Yeah,
and
killer schedules.
people just expect the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And my uncle's retired now. He's a specialised paramedic with Queenslanders, and people are just so, they can treat you like you're swimming, and because they're about to lose their life, they would literally drown you as well. Like some people are like that. That's vital flight when they're desperate to survive. And the hospital system has got lots of ways, you know. You have to be really savvy this century, you know. That's water and food scarcity and stuff like that. These are things that you're an expert on, but I can't emphasise enough that university already taught me to apply complementary alternative health methods alongside a specialist doctor.
There's definitely some benefits to like essentially mixing strains, for lack of a better term and all that. One of the most important things I could say about our current healthcare system is to really support our healthcare workers in it. If you see doctors, nurses planning a strike, looking for better conditions, better wages, and all of that jazz, it really helps us to help them out to make sure they can do it, because it was actually only maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that the Hippocratic Oath was updated in America to include that a doctor should essentially do the most for their patient, but also for themselves, because there was a recognition that they were burning themselves out and that they were becoming sloppy because they're too tired to do it. So it's getting better. It's very late to get better, but yeah. So that's what I'd say. That moves us to help our healthcare professionals by, you see them want to go on strike and all that, absolutely. Tell them to do it. Look after yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
You might just move.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Got a couple other questions.
Sorry, thank you for that. So we've got a couple of questions online. You could probably see those, but Catherine asks, what aspects of medical health would you like to bring into this course that you haven't been able to yet?
That's a very loaded question, because the ancient world is huge.
Yeah, that's true.
You would love to answer that one as well.
I would, yes.
I would. It's very tricky. I've never been able to think of a way to do it, but I'd love to talk more about mental health in the ancient world, because it's like you can look at some things like our various tales and myths and all that, and you can think like, was Achilles having PTSD, or was it depression after Patroclus was killed? What's happening with all these soldiers returning to Rome after sustained year after year after year of combat? Alexander the Great and his troops, they were overseas for so long, but testimonies from that time, they're unreliable witnesses, because I can't read ancient Greek, I can't read all these ancient languages, I'd have to have it translated. There's enough problems that happen with a translation, but then diagnosing by proxy is a not good thing. Yeah, I'd love to talk more about mental health, but I've got no idea how to do it at the moment.
Well, that was on to Brian's question, actually.
What do people in antiquity say about mental health? Largely, I'd say they don't understand it in the way that we would at the moment. I mean, even if you go back, even just like to last century, the amount of things which are just called by names which are pretty offensive these days, the amount of like, especially like mental health crises, which were just called, she's just being hysterical. It's like that, but then chuck another couple thousand years of patriarchy and whatnot on it. Yeah, I wouldn't know where to begin with that. Sorry, Brian. Liz, I'd actually love you to answer that question as well. Liz is my current co-lecturer in the course. She's like my shadow lecturer. She helps out where she is able to. What would you like to bring into it?
Oh God. Okay, so there's heaps of stuff that I would like to include as well. Obviously there's whole areas, like you were saying, of the ancient world that we just don't have space to cover. Places like ancient Asia, obviously ancient China is a huge untapped thing that we could dig into very deeply. I would like to bring sort of a more African-centric look to it as well, like more about ancient Africa, different parts of ancient Africa, particularly about natural remedies in particular. That is one thing that I would be really interested in bringing into it. I would also like to extend the other end of the course, so going into antiquity, but then sort of putting it into the beginning of the the Muslim era. So
Mm.
like 600
Yeah, another couple hundred
AD,
years.
another couple of hundred years.
Yeah.
And the developments in Islam and Islamic science is really interesting as well.
Yep.
There's so much we could do, really and truly.
See, we want to teach for like double the time we have,
Yeah.
but we've only got 12 weeks. So yeah. Any other questions in the room?
Other than like long form essay writing, is there like a specific point in history that they really struggle with? And like, how do you think that like medical mind versus like arts humanities minds?
Ooh.
Can I jump in on this?
Yeah.
So I mark the essays. They really cannot wrap their minds around the fact that, particularly with ancient Egypt, I mean, ancient Egypt in general has its challenges when newcomers to ancient Egypt are first studying it, right? Like they don't really know how to critically think about the sources that they're reading.
Yeah.
And time again, they keep on using really old sources. Like when I say really old sources from like 1899, and one of the first things we tell them is don't use outdated sources because their thinking is outdated, and we've moved on a lot since then on so many levels, like colonialism, gender studies, all that kind of stuff.
I showed them how like Howard Carter writes brilliant site reports, but his other writing is really terrible because in a lot of other respects, he was a very terrible person. Our thinking is if it didn't come from this millennium, it's probably too old to use. I want you to run it past me first. I think especially in recent years where they've become so, if they can't find it digitally, they're not going to use it. The amount of times I've had to tell them to actually go to the library, go pick out a book, look at the other books which are on the same area of the shelf. They will be on the same topic. You might find something there that you'd like to use as well, but leaving the Grafton campus is anathema to them. They're just like, they can't do it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, if they can't find it online, they're not going to use it. I now have a blanket rule of if it's a digital resource that you did not access using your uni UPI, so like something like JSTOR, Google Scholar, something like that, if it doesn't end in a .edu and all that kind of thing, you have to send it to me. I have to vet it first, and I will come back and I will let you know if it's pass or fail. I've had some brilliant ones brought to me. I've been like, oh, this is essentially like Dr. So-and-so's personal blog where he gets to write about whatever he wants without the university having a thing over him, and he still puts references. That's fantastic. That's great. Other times it's been quite literally a kook in an armchair, probably swinging on whatever, writing stuff up and being like, no, this was fine back when I was your age. So yeah, it's not Giza Death Star usually, but there's potential. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
So I thought that was really insightful about kind of the kind of written down kind of the reception of ancient Egypt within our modern society through a medical lens, but also the academic and arts perspective that you bring as well, especially from your experience from the GLAM sector now, your experiences here as a student coming through, and definitely your evolution from a younger person, the person you are now, through that trajectory that I've known for a long time to now having your beautiful family here too. I think that's wonderful to bring that in and can show how something like ancient Egypt can be reflective of our thoughts on modern Egypt, but within our site here in Auckland, New Zealand as well. But then bring those perspectives from students that are coming overseas too. So I think that was really brilliant. I did have a question that was kind of more around the late antique antiquity as well, in that do you find that if possible that's where students can see this kind of coalescing of those three particular ancient cultures, Rome, Greece and Egypt, but then how it gets drawn out and some of the perception on, say, the medical world there, or aspects of the medical world, it permeates still through to modern medicine?
Absolutely.
Is that something that they can ever shift their mindset about?
It's in a way it's a lot of fun for me, that lecture, because I get to do all this like summing up and in a weird way, almost cherry picking of aspects from Egypt, Greece, Rome, and being like, and here's how they got transformed in the Christianized empire, and all that, while also emphasizing to them that we are all products of this Christianized empire. One of my big things to them is that like how knowledge is transmitted around the world. majority of the time, it's by Christian missionaries. They were the conduit for laws, reading, writing, teaching out to the provinces. They're bringing news from the capital out to the regions, while at the same time they're coming with a mission to proselytize, to convert, and all this. And so anything we do has to be taken with, like, you have to see it through this lens as well. I really emphasize to them that had Constantine the Great, had he had a choice, like at some point in his life, he would have come to a crossroads himself, and he would have thought, I could go like my predecessors and wipe out the Christians. I could have another persecution of them, or I could look at it as my mother's people, and I could see them, and I could go with the faith. He opted to go with the faith. If he had full ability to go the other way, he was far too effective a ruler to do a half job. If he decided to wipe out the Christians, he would have bloody done it, and the entire world would be different as a result. I don't know if we'd be speaking English. We'd probably be speaking Latin. So with the Christianity era, it's this big thing of like, I need you to question everything I'm about to say in like in that kind of lens. And it did come. One student almost had like a semi-crisis of faith, because he was a very devout young man, and he was like, and he was honestly a little shocked about some of the things we talked about. It's like, yeah, this is not Sunday school, mate. So yeah, it was, yeah, it's an interesting lecture, interesting time to me. Yeah.
Probably time for one more question so we can wrap up shortly if anyone has any.
I have a very important question.
Go on.
Which one of your co-lecturers has been your favorite?
So mean.
See, you kind of played into this because he's not here to defend himself. At the same time, I know it would annoy both of you. I could just name Aaron.
That's true. That's true. My
Yeah.
bad.
It's definitely the fence-sitting peacekeeping option. But at the same time, because he actually sat in on a couple of my lectures last year, right after he was born, I could actually name my son Ambrose.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Absolutely shocking TA, but he was great as a distraction for my students when I was just like so
Oh.
but in all seriousness, this course it's a lot to do, even with two people. Steph, Aaron, Liz, you've been instrumental in helping these students get to where they are. Like I've seen so many of them actually go on to become doctors. They remember the course very fondly. So that's down to you guys as well. So if I had to do it all again, I would do it all again, and especially with you guys. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Take that.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
I think one more thanks for Joe for giving it and to obviously Liz as well to help facilitate for the interjections and contributions from Steph as well. Really do appreciate them. And I invite you all for the next lecture that we will have. We'll send out more information about that fairly soon once we get a bit more momentum going. We're hoping to have quite a series through the year, so keep a lookout for that as well. But thank you to everyone else, both in person and online, for attending as well. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.